Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see all the familiar faces with us again today. As I know, everyone is rushing out of class, settling in, or just rushing to get to the car or home to set up. So we are going to give another 3 minutes grace, and we will start at 3:05. Lovely to see you, Melissa. Let's see,
Happy to
Callie.
see you guys too.
Yes. Randy, great to see you again. Callie, welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Hey, Katie. So, just a little housekeeping. At the end of the session, I have a QR code and the survey. Upon completion of the today's session survey, you will receive your CEU hours. We will also be sending a PDF of the presentation to you as well. Mary's email will also pop in the chat. And so if you need additional support post this Transition Power Hour, please feel free to reach out to Mary directly. Any questions at this time? Ooh. Good afternoon and welcome. We'll start today's session at 3:05. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, Titus.
Hi. I was just sharing at the end of today's session, we will share the QR code or the URL to this survey. Upon completion of the survey, you will receive contact hours for today's session. We're starting at 3:05 to give grace to everyone hustling to get to the computer screen and set up for today's power hour. It's 3:05. So welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Transition Power Hour. Today, our topic of focus is budgeting. As we well know, financial literacy is crucial for our transition-aged youth because it empowers them to make informed financial decisions early in life, leading to greater financial stability, asset building, and achieving their personal goals while mitigating the potential for accumulating significant debt during the critical period when they are establishing their financial and economic foundation. So by addressing these early financial habits, such as budgeting, saving, and responsible credit usage, which are crucial for our transition age youth, by developing these habits early on, we can significantly impact our scholars' long-term financial well-being, making financial literacy a key tool for their future success. And so to this end, I'm pleased to introduce today Mary Dyer, Financial Education Programs Manager at the Finance Authority of Maine, who will lead today's discussion on the value of budgeting and the essential strategies to support financial capability, readying our transition age youth on the individualized path to success. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. I know you've
already had a very busy day, and I really do appreciate your time and attention to what I think many of us would agree is a critical topic and a critical strategy when it comes to our overall financial well-being. Unfortunately, however, it's one that sort of like dieting, we all kind of cringe when we talk about budgeting and tightening our belts, whether it's financially or any other ways. So I'm going to talk a lot about budgeting, but I think another way of framing this for the individuals that you're working with is a spending plan. So to create a plan for your money and for your spending, so that you're in the driver's seat for that. So I think it's a nicer way of framing it rather than budgeting, but it is one that I think that most consumers, myself included, I think struggle with more than anything. Perhaps really good at creating the budget, however, reviewing it and updating it and adjusting it as things change are consistent and ongoing challenges for many of us. So what I hope to do today is to really take you through some of the key steps for creating a successful budget, but more importantly, provide you with resources and tools that you can use with the scholars and individuals that you're working with in your various communities. So that's really what I want to leave you with, are some tools and resources and immediate information that you can use. So that's really the key goal of this presentation. Now, real quickly, and every presentation that we offer, just as a reminder, as Titus said, I serve as Financial Education Programs Manager at the Finance Authority of Maine. FAME is a quasi-independent state agency, and our whole mission and purpose is to provide support and financial solutions so that Maine people can be successful in their business and educational goals. So a little bit about us. I'm really zeroing in on one topic today, but if you don't know a lot about FAME and what we do and what we offer, I encourage you to reach out to me, explore our website. We offer one-on-one counseling in terms of completing the FAFSA and applying for financial aid and paying for college and training after high school. We also provide one-on-one counseling and support in terms of accessing and taking advantage of our college savings program here in Maine. So I hope that you'll reach out to us and learn more about us if you're not familiar with FAME, and know that everything that we do and everything that we offer is free for Maine people. And really, it's all in support of our mission to help Mainers be successful in their business and educational endeavors. So a little bit about, why budgeting? Why is this important? What is the whole point? And I think there's some key things around budgeting that we would all agree make it a key cornerstone activity in our financial management and planning. The most important one I listed first. I think that budgeting for me and for most of us provides an instant reality check. When we create a plan for our money and our spending, and then we go back and we evaluate how we did in that sort of outcome part of it, it provides sort of that instant, checkup of our spending. And is our spending aligned with our plan? And so I think that's the most important and critical thing about budgeting. We live in a society where it's very easy to spend money. And I'm someone who, for ease of, managing my bills and my spending, I'm very much an ACH, set it and forget it queen, right? And so that there's danger in that set it and forget it mentality, whether it's our spending or our savings, really puts us at risk of being detached from our money. It's also easier to spend now more than ever in terms of how we spend money. We're not in a cash-based society anymore. Credit cards, debit cards, Venmo, PayPal, QR codes. I mean, it's instant. And so I think that the budgeting and creating that spending plan really does ground you in the reality of really where your money is going. And that's the critical part of budgeting. Obviously, another important part of budgeting, it helps you to create a path toward setting and achieving financial goals. It's really helping you to create that plan based on what your future goals are. It can also help you to establish new habits and modify or change your behavior, or perhaps even eliminate old habits that aren't serving your financial goals. So that's another key thing that budgeting can uncover. Always, as always, an important part of budgeting is to help us to build emergency savings and the opportunity to build assets and invest in the future. And without a plan for our money that allows us to achieve that, it's very difficult to reach that end goal. And then ultimately it provides peace of mind and provides you with sort of guardrails and gives individuals license, if you will, to spend in certain categories. There's something to say that if I'm setting aside a certain amount of money in my budget for my concert tickets, we're going to talk about spending leaks later. So there's one of mine that I've just confessed. But if I've set aside in my budget for that entertainment or vacation or, whatever that financial goal is, it provides me with that peace of mind that I've given myself permission to do that. So those are the key kind of benefits of budgeting or creating a spending plan. Now, as you're working with individuals, there are some things that as we're working with students in various communities of various ages, there are some key things that we recommend. And this is in particular important for students who are in that high school or beyond, even middle school. These are some activities that we'll use with younger students, but certainly students who are, entering that high school timeframe or beyond. So a couple of things we want them to do before you dive in working with them on budgeting. The first one is we want them to be thinking about their future self. I think that we often don't spend time either with ourselves or with individuals that we're working with, giving them an opportunity to step back and pause and imagine themselves in the future, to really think about themselves 10 years from now and consider, what do they want their life to look like? What would they like to see in their life? What would they like to be doing? Where would they like to be living, working? What does it all look like in the future? And that ability to sort of self-actualize their future self helps put them in the position of being successful and making decisions today that support that future self. We also encourage them in that exploration of future self to think about what steps do they need to take now to accomplish that, and what might get in the way, what might derail them along the way. So the first resource I want to share in our Build publication, and you'll see there's an image of the publication there on the screen. We have a page in that publication that really helps them to tease out their vision of their future self. And we want a lot of detail. We don't want, individuals that we're working with to say, oh, I want to be living somewhere outside of Maine and making lots of money, or, we want specificity around that future self. And so this tool really allows them to do that. Now, that Build publication is an extensive tool that provides kind of the key steps to successful money management. It's a publication that can be downloaded on the FAME website, or you can order print copies of the publication for free from FAME. So if you go to our publications page, you can order that and you can distribute it to the individuals that you're working with. But within that, you'll find that future self tool. And it's just a really useful tool. And what we know about behavioral science is that when we think about our future goals and our future self, we're more likely to accomplish that. That's just the nature of kind of who we are as humans and how our behavior is driven around our emotions and our psychology. Just real quickly looking at the chat to make sure I'm not missing any questions. So that's the first thing we want them to do. Really get in touch with their future self and what their vision is for their future. The next resource that I want to provide you, and I think a really valuable next activity, is to help them to begin to understand their money mindset. what really drives their financial decision making. What we know about financial decision making is it's very much tied to our emotions and our psychology, not necessarily our knowledge and sort of what we know we're supposed to be doing. It's much more about emotions and the psychology of our thinking and our mindset. And so one of the tools that we also have to offer through our Fame Enrich platform, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, is a money mindset tool that allows an individual to go through a series of questions and prompts that allows them to understand their money emotions, their influencers, and a number of key things that help drive that money mindset. So again, those are two really quick free activities and resources that we offer, and I think are a nice kind of starting point before we dive into budget, because I think stepping back and that sort of that self and that psychology of self is really, really important in this process. So with that, I want to talk about Enrich and the online educational tools that we do have to offer. We offer free online financial wellness to all Maine people. There are two versions of our tool that we have available. The first one is available at fame.igrad.com. This is a tool that we use as early as late middle school, all the way through high school and into college. There is a second version that's available at fame.enrich.org that is available for adults. And I realize that you're working at all different developmental stages and that adults are in college. So it's a little tricky when we try to define these two tools. But really, I think that iGrad, that tool offers a more foundational, basic approach to money management. And the Enrich tool is more focused for adults who are in the workforce and who have taken that, after education or training phase into that phase of their life. But this is an online free platform, again, that we have purchased for the entire state of Maine for all individuals. And it is a robust tool that provides online education. A couple of key things that are really beneficial. First of all, the model for this tool is that it's paid for by Fame, so that when users sign up for it and they provide their email address, they're not going to be bombarded by third-party marketing and promotion and that sort of thing. So it is locked down in terms of the kind of third-party piece of it. It is also highly customized based on the user. So no two platforms look exactly alike when you log in. When an individual signs up for the first time, and it's just their name and their email address, very basic information to sign up, it's going to take them through a financial checkup, or again, a series of prompts that help to determine their life stage and what their financial goals might be and what perhaps some of their financial stresses are. And then it's going to serve up content to them based on how they responded to that checkup. So getting started with Enrich is very easy. Create an account. They can complete their financial wellness checkup. They can then use the money personality tool that I mentioned. And then there are courses that they can complete, videos, articles, infographics, just a whole set of robust tools to help them with their financial knowledge through an online e-learning platform. I see Enrich as being kind of one tool in your toolbox. It's not the be all end all. There is unfortunately no silver bullet to solve all of our financial challenges and build financial knowledge, but Enrich and iGrad are a couple of tools that help to really set that foundation. So I hope that you'll check that out. I wanted to dive into it because some of the budgeting tools that I'm going to mention are within Enrich and iGrad. And so I want you to be aware of those tools and know where to find them. So if we have time, we can look at it more, but just wanted to kick off with an overview of that resource.
So I have a question, Mary.
Yeah.
So the enrich.org platform, would this support our students that are between 18 and 22?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
They could use either iGrad or Enrich, truly. I think that, what I would suggest to the professionals on this webinar and those who might be listening later is to create an account for yourself in both platforms and take a look at it and then determine, based on the individuals that you're working with, which tool is best suited. Again, iGrad is more suited for students who are, individuals who are, age 16 well into college age, so 16 to 24, maybe even a little bit earlier than that in terms of, middle school. And then Enrich is really for life beyond that sort of training period where individuals are working and have entered the workforce. So there's more emphasis on workplace resources in Enrich, whereas iGrad is going to focus a little bit more on resources to prepare for education and training early on in adulthood. So I hope that's helpful. I know that it is challenging when I refer to grade levels and different stages, but I think that probably the best thing to do is to sign up, take a look at them, and see which one best fits the individuals that you're working with.
One more question.
Yeah.
So once our scholars have accounts and signed up, how do they share their progress or the initial assessment data with their teachers?
Yeah, so great question. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. When they complete their money personality tool, for example, or they complete an assessment, there's actually a progress meter that they can share. They can do a screenshot and share that, not a little more cumbersome in terms of that progress. But when they complete a course, there's 21 courses. When they get to the end of the course, there's actually a certificate of completion that they can download or print to share with their facilitator. So there's a number of different ways that they can share that. Certificate of completion or the progress tools or badges are probably the easiest way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great questions. Thank you.
We have one more question in the chat. Are there resources for functional life skills, academic skills set in early elementary? I heard you speak to middle school, but are there tools that we could take and maybe differentiate for even lower skills, especially our students with ID?
Yeah, probably not. I would say not in iGrad or Enrich. Those resources, I think there's certainly life skills and what we call adulting 101 tools and resources, but it really is not designed for the K-8, for younger students.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The other tool I want you to be aware of, and it's a great segue into the younger, into this topic as we discuss working with younger students. We have a financial wellness online tool, and it also has a classroom game kit or program kit that we can provide to you for your classroom. But essentially, this is an online or classroom-based financial simulation. So it allows students and individuals an opportunity to explore various careers and education and actually simulate a budget before they have money to spend. So for those of you that are working with younger students, I would say rather than iGrad or Enrich, Claim Your Future would be a really perfect solution for working with students to help prepare them for future money management. Again, it takes them through that budgeting activity and financial decision making without them having to actually be, in that life stage. So I would check out Claim Your Future. The classroom kit, you'll see it's a picture of it there. We provide those free of charge to any educator or any educational nonprofit in Maine. If you go to claimyourfuture.org, you can request a kit. We just recently updated them with all of the latest median income and cost of living data for the state of Maine, and a ton of new exciting features. So check that out. It can also be played online at claimyourfuture.org. So that's another tool I want you to be aware of that really does zero in very well on budgeting for younger individuals. All right, so another quick thing before we get into the kind of key steps to budgeting. I would strongly recommend any individuals that I'm working with, and I know this is such a powerful activity for me as well, before I begin to really create the plan, it's always helpful for me to track every penny that I spend for an entire month. This is one of the most powerful activities. Again, it's that reality check. Now, it doesn't have to be a fancy spreadsheet or an app or some, technology-based tool. It can literally be a piece of paper where you're jotting down what you've spent, an envelope that you're putting receipts into, something really, really basic that allows you to track. And you want to track every single penny, no matter how small that purchase may seem. A month is really beneficial. Obviously, longer is even better because it helps you to uncover seasonal expenses like utilities, times of the year where things cost more. We want to really kind of be aware of that. But this is a really, I think, great precursor to creating that budget, to really begin to get a handle on where the money is going. Where are you spending, and where is that spending aligned to what you are hoping that it will be? Identifying those spending leaks, and again, whether that spending is meeting your needs. On that topic, and I promise we will get to budgeting, but really the budgeting process itself is pretty straightforward, right? Income, expenses, creating a plan. So we will dive into that, but I think there's some key things that I want to talk about. So when we talk about needs, this is another area where there's a lot of psychology and behavioral science here. So one of the things we often say to the individuals that we're working with is you need to have a strong understanding of your wants versus your needs. And we harp on this, wants versus needs. And over the last many years, we've spent a lot more time learning about behavioral science at FAME. We've actually worked very closely with Dr. Sarah Newcomb, who is a doctor of behavioral science. She actually graduated from the University of Maine, and she's a Maine, doesn't live in Maine now, but she's from Maine, and she's an author and national speaker and expert on all things related to psychology of money and behavioral finance or behavioral science. And one of the things that she'll say to you is stop talking about wants versus needs, because they're all needs. There's no such thing as wants. They're all needs. Every purchase and every dollar that we spend is fulfilling a need. And the sooner that we can get in touch with what need that's fulfilling, the better off that we'll be. What we tend to do, and I hear a lot of financial experts do this, I do it myself, is we really focus on, and you'll see here a chart of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we all zero in on the physiological needs. Is it food, air, shelter, clothing, the basics. We zero in on those are the needs, and everything else doesn't matter. When the reality is it all matters. Our safety need matters. Our desire to be loved and belong matters. Our esteem, our status, recognition, our freedom, all of that matters. Those are all equally important needs. Self-actualization, wanting to become that vision of who we want to be. All of those things matter. They're all needs. And our spending can be categorized into any one of these. And so I think another thing to learn more about, to talk with students about, is when you make that purchase, what need is it fulfilling? Because they're all needs. And is it fulfilling it in a way that's satisfying to you? One of the things that happens is we sometimes have needs in conflict, where we use one strategy to meet a need that interferes with our other needs. And sometimes, often, we don't even think about it. It's unconscious. It can happen in a moment where that need feels very urgent. I think a great example is money that we spend when we're with peers or family members or friends, that love and belonging and esteem, we're fulfilling those needs. And so I think to step back and to think about those individual purchases and what needs are those filling, and are they filling them appropriately based on your financial goals? The book that Dr. Newcomb most recently authored is called Loaded. And you can find it on Amazon. And it really does a wonderful job at diving into that psychology piece, wants versus needs. And she really just does an amazing job and has helped us to really rethink that whole concept. Everything we buy is fulfilling a need, and there's no judgment there. What we need to do is get in touch with whether or not it's really fulfilling the need that we desire, or is it sabotaging other needs that are more important to us and we just don't even realize it. So that's all the before budgeting stuff. So one of the other questions that we commonly get from individuals when we're working on budgeting is, where does the money go? What is typical in terms of consumers and where their money is being spent? As I look at my budget and what percentage is typical, what should I be spending? And so this is just a quick slide. And again, as was mentioned in the beginning, you'll all get a copy of these slides, and the data is available. This will not come as any surprise to any of you, housing being the number one expense in our lives. And for many of us, if only it was 33% of our expenditure, for many, it's more than that. After that, transportation is our next biggest expense, followed by food, and then you can see the other additional expenses from there. So I think this is a helpful graphic to show or to just kind of have in your own mindset to be thinking about as you're building that budget as well. Where is the money going, and what are the realistic percentages of our expenditures based on those categories? So now I'm really going to dive into the budget and where do we get started? What do we need to know about that? So as we're creating a budget, we want to, first of all, be sure that we have created something that's measurable, actionable, and realistic. We don't want it to be too complex that we're not going to use it. We don't want it to be hard to access. We want it to be motivating. And so there's some key things that you want to establish upfront. First of all, you want it to be measurable with a specific time element. And there's no rule or, requirement that you create a monthly budget. Some individuals really like to create a weekly budget. Some individuals are looking at a month of expenses or perhaps 3 months of expenses. It really is all dependent on what motivates you and what helps to keep you on track. So you want to be really clear up front. What's that measurable time element? What do you want to accomplish, and when do you want to accomplish it by? What's the point of your budget? You want it to be actionable. So you obviously want it to create and have specific tactics built in that will help you be successful in whatever those future financial goals are, whether it's savings, reducing debt, investing, whatever that might be. You want it to be actionable. And then very important, we want it to be realistic. We want it to be based on, realistic, your income expectations, and the fact at the end of the day, we have specific expenses and minimum expenses that we have to have. So we want it to be realistic, and we want to allow a reasonable time for you to see it through and to allow you to be successful. So those are kind of some key foundational things that before you create the budget, you want to sort of decide, what time frame am I looking at? What actions or tactics am I going to employ to make sure that I'm achieving those financial goals? And am I being realistic? Is this really something I can accomplish over time? As I mentioned, when we look at tracking spending and our spending leaks, you want to be sure that you look at all expenses, no matter how small. Don't underestimate those small purchases. As much as companies and corporations would like us to ignore those small purchases, we can't do that. I think streaming services, coffee used to be the one that always got the really bad rap, your daily coffee and your daily, Starbucks or Dunkin'. But now I think streaming services are the one of the moment. We sign up, we have that set it and forget it. We don't think it's a big deal because it's $5.99, it's $9.99, no big deal. Did you know that the average American has almost 5 streaming channels? And those are at various cost levels. And probably many of them aren't aware that they have 5. They think maybe they have a couple, but there's a lot more than that. So you want to consider all expenses, no matter how small. More important than the budget, it's monitoring and really reflecting on, okay, you created the plan. What was my outcome? How did my spending align with that plan? And monitor and adjust ongoingly. As income changes, as costs change, you need to go in and make those adjustments. On the previous slide, we saw that housing was a big expense. Food is another major expense. You want to be sure that you're watching that food and grocery bill, and really any expenses where there's any flexibility that you have in terms of decision making. We also want to encourage individuals to regularly shop their fixed expenses. Again, avoid the set it and forget it. Key categories: your cell phone, your insurance, any insurances, as I said, streaming, even your credit card interest rate, your car loan interest rates, your mortgage rates, those kinds of things. We don't want to pick a plan and walk away and never look back. Car insurance is a great example where if you shop around and do your homework, you can save money, and you want to be sure that you're in the right insurance plan at the right cost. And then you want to kind of budget, as I said earlier in the beginning, budget to fit your lifestyle. Think of it as a nutrition plan and not a restrictive diet. You want to build in the fun. You want to build in the entertainment and allow yourself permission to do that when possible. So a couple of things and strategies that some individuals use, and I think these strategies can be really helpful for the audiences that you're working with. Practicing self-discipline can be really difficult, especially, as I mentioned earlier, how easy it is to spend. So the cash only method, I know a lot of, I've had colleagues who've been very successful in the cash only method, and they have envelopes set aside where they put the cash in the envelope at the beginning of the week. And when the cash is gone, they're done spending. And so sometimes setting aside that cash and using a cash only method, especially when interacting with friends and colleagues and family members, that can be really powerful. Once you've created a budget and you've created a plan, sharing that with your family and caregivers. Be proud. There's a new social media trend called loud budgeting, where we're giving individuals permission now to say, no, I'm saving for this financial goal. I'm building my emergency fund. Sorry, I'm not going to go out and do whatever that activity is because I'm saving. Let's get together and socialize in a different way that costs less money. It's less, I think, of a stigma with this new, the social media loud budgeting approach to say, hey, no, I'm planning for that future goal. And so those are some self-discipline approaches that might work. And ultimately, that may help the individual or all of us lead to sort of that bigger financial success, whether it's paying down debt, creating an emergency savings, investing, education, savings, car, any of those future goals. But the self-discipline is the key part of it. A lot of individuals are motivated by having things clearly displayed in their, whether it's on their smartphone, having something on their home screen that is an image that reminds them of their financial goal. Maybe it's their computer screensaver that reminds them of their goal. Some people have little Post-it notes on their mirror in their bathroom that is reminding them of their goal. Those visual reminders can be really powerful to keep you on track as well. One of the questions, and I'm going to move past this quickly, but we often get questions about, what is my spending and saving rule of thumb? And I often will say there are no hard and fast rules. But in terms of your overall income and what you're designating into different buckets of spending, this sort of rule of thumb that Dr. Newcomb shared with us, I think really resonated with me. 30% going to the past, your debt, paying off debt, whether it's credit cards, car loans, mortgages, whatever your life situation is. 50% of your income going to the present, your current expenses, the things that you have to pay for now. And 20%, wouldn't it be wonderful if we were all in a position of putting 20% aside for the future? That's a wonderful rule of thumb, not necessarily realistic for all of us, but it provides, again, that framework or that guardrail. And I put this in the presentation because it is a question that we get a lot. If all things were equal and I were doing kind of, putting myself in the best position financially, what would it look like? And that 30, 50, 20 is one recommendation that we've seen over and over. So now that we've gotten into kind of the budgeting strategies, I want to share with you some tools that you can use that make it really easy to create a budget. We've talked about Enrich and iGrad, and you'll find on both platforms, there's actually a course on budgeting. It's a quick course, 15 minutes long. And when I say course, I don't want you to imagine that the user is going to be reading page after page of words on the screen. It's video delivered. It's quick polls and kind of personalized setup. There's some interactive exercises. And then again, when they complete it, they get their certificate of completion. So I would encourage you to check out the budgeting course. There's a Start Here guide for budgeting. There are numerous videos, articles, tools, calculators on budgeting, all available through Enrich. So I encourage you to check that out. And again, it's available both in Enrich and in iGrad. From there, I want to talk about what tools do individuals use? What can you use? What do you recommend when it comes to actually creating and putting pen to paper to create that budget? There's no hard and fast rule here. Really, the important thing is to use the tool that you'll be most successful in using, the one that you're going to look back to and access more regularly than not. So for many of us, just good old-fashioned pad of paper and pencil. For some, an envelope with different spending categories and the cash-only method that I mentioned works. For some, elaborate or very basic spreadsheets, really, Excel spreadsheets work really well for many people. Some folks like to use online budgeting tools. That's great. Others love apps and software, phone-based software. And there's no hard and fast rule, but I want to talk a little bit about kind of the benefits and pitfalls of each one. So the good old-fashioned method, paper, pencil, envelopes, cash only. This is beneficial for many reasons. One, as I mentioned earlier, it's front and center. It's in front of you all the time. If it's an app on your phone, you got to log into it, and you got to go to it, and you got to actually use it. But when you have something right in front of you that's either on your desk, in your purse, in your bag, wherever it might be that you're looking at and turning to on a regular basis, it may be more effective. It's sometimes easier to track and manage because, again, when you make those purchases, you're just putting out those details in the envelope, you're writing it somewhere. It allows you to stay in touch with your money. That cash only method, I can't underscore that more because it really does reattach you to your spending, whereas debit cards and credit cards really detach you from your money. And so that cash only and that very manual way of creating a budget can be very, very effective and simple and I think gratifying when you have it, again, front and center. Apps and software can be great too. What's wonderful about so many of them is they will automatically migrate your information. For example, many financial institutions have a platform that allows you, or an app that allows you to easily look at your spending, and it's automatically categorized for you. And they're very slick and they work really well. They're convenient, they're colorful, they're connected to your spending and your accounting. A lot of young people really like using their mobile device as a budgeting tool. So that's great. If that works, go for it. Things to consider, is there a cost? Are you going to use it? Are you going to log in and use it? What are the privacy, considerations? Does it provide you with a lot of the specific spending detail? I know with the apps that I use, it might categorize them neatly for me, but they're not specific enough. Entertainment, that's a pretty broad category. Food, pretty broad category. How did I actually use that money when I went to the grocery store? Food is a pretty large category, and I want to drill down even further. And sometimes the apps don't give you enough of the basics. But that being said, really having that device in your hand and having that information there. I have some friends who use apps and love them. They have alerts set up so that when certain purchases are made or they hit certain balances, it alerts them on their phone, and they're provided with that reminder of kind of where they're at. And I think that can be really powerful as well. Again, no one hard and fast method. Worksheets also work really well for a lot of people, and there's a lot of them out there. Consumer.gov has some wonderful budgeting worksheets. We have a worksheet in our Build publication. You'll notice that we call it a spending plan worksheet because it sounds much nicer. But you can actually use that in the Build publication or on our website. And then Enrich and iGrad have worksheets that are much simpler that you can download. As I mentioned, maybe a basic spreadsheet on your computer or on your device. The benefit of a spreadsheet is that it can be very specific. You're entering the information yourself, so it can be very detailed and very flexible and easy to update. So, it may work for you. Again, you might be someone who prefers mobile apps, but spreadsheets can work equally as well. It's all really picking the method that you're going to actually interact with and update and use on a regular basis. All right, so with that, I want to leave you with some additional resources, and then I want to take time for questions and discussion. Really, again, as was mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I'm available at any time. You can call me, email me, reach out, and I'm happy to talk further and provide additional resources. On our website, if you go to famemaine.com/build, you'll find all of the financial wellness resources that we've created for individuals. Fame.enrich.org and fame.igrad.com. We've mentioned that many times. Those are all of the online financial wellness tools. Our Build publication, we've got our guide there that I've mentioned. We have a number of tools and calculators on the Fame website. And then lastly, a non-Fame resource, but one that I think is so valuable and a great resource is New Ventures Maine. They are a nonprofit who also offers financial wellness. They have courses, counseling. They manage all of the Cash Maine free tax prep sites. So I would encourage you to check out New Ventures in support of the scholars that you're working with as well, because there's a lot of great resources. I think also encouraging anyone that you're working with, especially if they're in that 18 to 24 age, is to make sure that they interact with their financial institution to find out what free financial counseling or financial resources or budgeting tools might be available there as well. Because as I mentioned, many banks and credit unions have a number of counseling tools, budgeting resources that are available to consumers. So I always encourage Mainers to start with their local financial institution that they already have an established relationship with. So with that, I am thrilled. I've got 10 minutes left for questions and thrilled. I mentioned to Titus at the beginning that I'm got a little bit of a cold going on here. So I made it through without any coughing spells or anything to slow me down. I'm just going to take a look and see if there's any questions in the chat, but I encourage you all to unmute and ask any questions that you may have, or comments or thoughts, any reflections that you have in terms of your own budget. As I mentioned and confessed to you in the beginning, for me, it's always about that update and the looking back. I can create until the cows come home. It's going back and making sure I'm checking my progress and updating as time goes on. That's always one of my challenges. So feel free to unmute now and ask any questions that you may have, or offer up any resources that you've encountered along the way. And if there are none, we can give you a few minutes back to your afternoon. I appreciate your time.
I have one follow-up question. So many of our students are not necessarily working full-time as yet. So the monies that they are earning is not a full paycheck. However, I hear from most of the teachers that they always kind of guide the student to put 50% away. But we do know that saving habits start early and budgeting habits need to start early. So if they were to plan a budget that would that they would frame as a consistent practice, so that when they start earning that bigger paycheck, that they will follow the same rule, would you still advise teachers to say only 50% versus going, hey, the standard is you'd be paying bills with at least a third to half of your paycheck, right? And that's housing, transportation, your bills, your food, any other expenses would be a third to a half. Then you'd have your savings, which is about 20%.
Yeah.
So actually, you should be saving at least 70 to 80% of your of whatever you earn at any time.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
standard go-to of 50. They should know that they're not going to have that much access to their money, and they need to have that consistent mindset of only 20% is going to be saved going forward, and all that money is going to be used. So you might as well put all that money away and only use that 20% or 30%.
Right. I think that that's a reasonable plan. And it creates that expectation for the future. You know, if they're putting away 70% of their earnings, then they are already ready for those expenses and that 20% of savings in the future. I think that, I don't have any objections to that concept. I think where I struggle is the rules are difficult to kind of establish across the board. Like it's hard to kind of broad brush all of it. So this could be an individual working part-time, but perhaps they're providing support to their family, or, they have other financial obligations, or, perhaps giving, that they're setting aside money for savings, but they want to give, and they want to, have some spending money. So I think what's more important than the percentages is the habit. So establishing that ongoing habit of setting aside some percentage relative to their income and their spending. That's what's more important than the exact amount. But I think your strategy and your thinking around that is I think a really good approach. But it's so individual, depending on the circumstances. I think it's the habit that's more important than the percentage. And I think it's unusual, even in the case, and this is just anecdotal, I don't have any data to back this up, but even in the case of younger people who are working part-time, that there's no spending occurring. There's likely some spending. And so I think in addition to establishing the habit of them tracking that spending. So, where are those pennies going? Even if it's only a small purchase, over time, getting them to appreciate the impact of small spending over time and the impact of small savings over time, because we diminish both. We diminish small spending. That's why things cost $5.99 instead of $6, because we psychologically say, oh, it's only $5.99. It's not $6. And so we diminish the impact of that. And then with savings, we think, well, if I can only put aside $5 a week, how is that ever going to get me anywhere? So it's that weird reversal that we do in our brains. And so I think getting them, regardless of their income, to establish the habit, and also getting them in touch with the spending really early on can be life-changing. Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing is accountability.
Yeah.
That's tracking, right? And so and then forming those foundational habits from a very
absolutely
nice.
And then the budget, that's the nudge. So we all suffer from inertia. We're busy and our lives are full, and there's so many pressures. And so the budget is that ongoing accountability, as you said, and that nudge to keep us on track. And it's our scale. I get on my scale in my bathroom on a regular basis, and that's my accountability. Like that vacation I just went on, how much damage did I do? And that's the budget. That's really what the budget is. And if we think about it that way, it's that accountability and that nudge to keep us on track with whatever we want that future result to be. So
loving the analogy. Thank you so much for your time, Mary. This information is, I think, integral as we start our transition portfolios for the year with our students. And accountability of self will empower our students, right? In once again, accountability and empowerment, financial empowerment as they move through the year, right? Preparing for that summer jobs or the Christmas job that's coming up, etc. I have placed the Power Hour survey link in the chat. Please complete the survey to receive your contact hours. We will be sending out a PDF of the presentation today, as well as links to all the resources discussed and reviewed in today's Power Hour session. With that, I thank you for your time, and we will see you all and more next week. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
thanks, everyone.